And I'm happy to welcome you to this practitioner lecture. I'd like to introduce Johann Robette, who is a customer success manager at Velica. Did I say that right? Velica, a French software as a service company dedicated to supply planning through probabilistic forecasting and econometric optimization of supply decisions. He's also a frequent contributor to the ISF community, and especially I appreciate his contributions to the Foresight Practitioner Journal. And he talks, his papers and research interests links forecasts to effective impacts on profit and loss, which is an area that I find very interesting. And so without further ado, I'd like to have Johann come up and talk about value matters.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for being here. I know it's a quite long track, meaning I'm in competition with a dozen of other great presentations, so having you here is really important for me. Thank you for this, and thanks for the opportunity also to be on stage today and to share more in details what I've been working on for the last few years, I would say. Indeed, my name is Johann. I'm working for a company that's called Velica, so it's a French company dedicated to inventory optimization. The company actually comes from the research. It has been created from a researcher in machine learning. And it's basically doing supply planning based on probabilistic forecast and end-to-end economic inventory optimization to really make sure that actually the decisions that we propose, that we generate, are meaningful from a business perspective. Within the company, I'm a customer success manager, so I'm not at all an academic here, more on the practitioner side. And as a customer success manager, my role is to ensure that our solution effectively delivers value to our customers, that they are satisfied with it. So definitely there's a lot of my job that is to show the money to the customers, actually to make all the computations down to the P&L and shows how much value using our solution has bring to their company. So it's not a big surprise that I'm highly interested in return on investment and profit and loss. It's not only part of my mission as a customer success manager, it has definitely become something I'm passionate about. That might be a bit weird when I say that to friends, but actually it's true. And so I made this my field of research, and I tried really to investigate the link from the forecast down to the final impact on the economic of a company. Just to give you a glimpse of what I've shared so far and where I am in the journey and how does this presentation fits within this learning journey. In 2022, that was my first ISF at Oxford, and there I investigated using the M5 competition the correlation existing between accuracy metric, not one but dozens of ones, not dozens but 1 dozen, it's already enough, and the effective decisions those forecasts would have triggered and the effective impact from an economic standpoint. And the results were quite interesting and I would say concerning because the correlation was actually pretty weak, which raised a lot of interest. And actually other great people were discussing about it as well. So ultimately it gave it created the Foresight special issue that was called Does Accuracy Even Matter? And was really happy to contribute to that. In 2023, last year in Charlottesville, maybe some of you have had the opportunity to be there and to attend the presentation. I looked at the same topic, how much value a forecast generate, but the other way around. I assessed or quantified how much value is left on the table because the forecast is wrong. And doing that, I showed that, in fact, even wrong forecasts, or not good enough forecasts, or imperfect forecasts, are, in many cases, good enough to trigger the perfect decisions, meaning that you can of course, improve them, and it would improve accuracy and so on, but you might not get any benefit from it from an economic standpoint. So again, it was really interesting. This allowed me to be invited to the M6 conference to share a summary of the 2 previous studies. And here we are. Today's agenda for Dijon will be about probabilistic forecasts. So far, I only focused on deterministic forecasts. But at Vecchia, we do probabilistic ones. We are convinced it delivers a lot of value. So why are we convinced that it's better than deterministic ones? Then a totally legitimate question, if it's so valuable, why are there only few companies that turn to probabilistic forecasts, and why do most companies are pretty happy with our deterministic ones? And last, and that's why I'm really excited to be here and to share the results, I will be sharing a study from the M5 competitions that will definitely put the interest for probabilistic forecasts. Quick disclaimer first. In this presentation, we'll be discussing forecasts. I know it's a forecasting conference, but from the previous presentation, many of you have already confirmed that we don't forecast in vacuum, right? We are forecasting to help trigger better decisions to have an impact. So I really believe it makes sense to also link that to the type of decisions that will be created, triggered based on those forecasts and their impact. It's important for us as forecasters not to work in a silo, but also to look behind the curtain of how those forecasts are gonna be used. Now that you know everything about me, and we have kind of an intimate crowd, not that much, I'd like to know a bit more about you. Quick, raise your hand if you're practitioner, if you define yourself or have been a practitioner. I'm just looking at you this way. Okay, so majority of the room, perfect. Who's have been dealing with supply chain so far? Again, good fit, thank you. Who's already convinced probabilistic forecast it's deterministic for breakfast? Hey, very few. I hope that at the end of the day, at the end of the talk, if I do the poll, you will be much more to raise your hand. And who's there because there were no more room in the other, in other presentations? Okay, so thanks for being honest. But if it's the case, please stay in the room. I'm pretty sure you will appreciate what's going on. Okay, so let's start with the first question, actually. Why do we think that probabilistic forecasts outperform deterministic ones? Or, if I put it differently, what's wrong with deterministic forecasts? You've probably, and we've all came to a variant or another from this picture that is quite foundational for me, with a lot of humor, but also with a bit of sarcasm. It shows that describing a complex context with one single number can be quite dangerous and hazardous in terms of decision making. Actually, the very first illustration that this one took its origin on is from Dr. Sam Savage, who's from Stanford University, and he has wrote this very interesting book about the flow of averages, where he outlined the danger of relying on averages when we are making decisions. But actually, his point is much broader than that. It's the danger of only considering one single figure to make a decision when the context is actually way more complex. Because when we do that, actually we are losing a lot of information. It's like if we looked at a picture with only one pixel. It's pretty hard to see what's on the picture, if it's good or not. And it's pretty hard to prepare for that as well. This, of course, applies to dozens of contexts, and let's admit it's applied also to forecast. When we forecast, we definitely all agree that it's just one future, that there's errors around that there's uncertainty, yet we stick simplifying the forecast to one single figure most of the time and hanging this only one figure to the users, the consumers of the forecast. It's not that this figure is not right. I mean, if it's a mean forecast, I mean, the mean is definitely well calibrated and defined. If the median is a median, but actually it's not enough to make good decisions. You might be thinking, yeah, but we are doing exactly what we are asked for, because most of the time, people who want to make decisions ask for a forecast and they expect a single figure, and that's right. But I'm definitely saying that we are wrong to do that, and we should educate them more, because it's really dangerous and harmful to our companies to do that. In fact, we know the future is way more complex. We have tons of possible futures. That's the beauty of a future, by the way. It's not written in advance, so some futures are plausible, possible, probable, whatever. But the main point is there's not only one future, but multiple ones. And if we do, I mean, if we look at it, at the future from the standing point of the decision makers, actually their role is to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. If we bring them only one finger, only one of those futures, there's no best to hope for, or there's no worst to prepare for. There's just one future. There's no optimization possible. So doing so is harmful, and in fact, it's oversimplifying. We have this famous quote. It's pretty easy to quote it right now. So, but I think we are maybe doing things, making things too simple in the way we convey our forecast. And to come back to a quote I would emphasize throughout this talk, when we are to make decisions, in fact, that's the uncertainty that matters. That's where all the information is, and not just in the mean. Okay, so from now, we're going to discuss inventory management only in supply chain, and more precisely, I would say retail-like supply chain, and more precisely, I would say the distribution of goods within a retail network. Why am I narrowing the context that much? Because I see a lot of people arguing and debating about if this is right or wrong in this given context, this method is better, AI rules or AI sucks. In fact, it all depends on the context. And if we don't clearly define the context, then debating won't provide any insightful results. So we'll only be addressing this context. It does not mean, by the way, I lost one screen. It doesn't mean, by the way, that what we'll be saying here is wrong in different contexts, but it's not applicable in other contexts. It's just I'm humble enough to say I don't know. I'm not expert in those, so I'd rather clearly define the limits here, and I'll let you judge and see if there's interest for that in different or in other contexts. This important disclaimer being made, I'd like to start with maybe just put it the scene and discussing briefly two myths about supply chain. Quite often, when we discuss what's the true role of a supply chain, we say, okay, we must have the right product at the right time at the right place. It's a common saying, which actually is totally wrong. Supply chain is not about inventory optimization. Supply chain is about delivering the service of the company in the most profitable way. So it's not just about inventory, it's way more than that. It goes from optimizing transportation, logistics, operations, and so on. And all of them are triggered by our decisions about the forecast. So we must not restrict our analysis to only the cost of inventories. And second myth is about the importance of forecast. So I already made the disclaimer, it's in retail, distribution, blah, blah. So it's important, but I'm sometimes a bit frustrated when I hear people or customers or prospects that are basically only interested in improving the forecast. Because in their head, all the value is in the forecast, and then it's basic math. You just take your forecast, subtract your current inventory, what's in transit, and then you get your need, and you order it, and that's it. You have your best optimized decisions. Actually, that's totally wrong. There's a lot, of course, there's a lot of value in the forecast, but there's also a lot of value in the decision making, how much we order, and there's tons of constraints that we have to account for. So, for example, physical capacity, financial capacity. Are we able to buy this inventory and to hold it for months? What are the costs, the gains? What's the uncertainty? We quite often talk about uncertainty in demand, but in fact, in this type of decisions, uncertainty is everywhere. It's how are you sure that your supplier is really going to deliver you on the specific date, that what he would be delivered would be qualitative enough, that it would that the return that you might get from the customers, how much of returns you can expect, and how to account for that in your decisions. And even for some companies, knowing what's in the inventory right now is almost impossible. It's a nowcasting type of decision. They don't know how much inventory they have. And then you add on top of that, considering what has been negotiated with suppliers in the contracts, how to make the best out of those. You have to consider opportunistic buying. So if the product is pretty cheap right now, it might worth it to buy it, even though you don't need it right now. But it's a good deal, actually. But the forecast won't help with that. And we have to account, of course, for the strategy of a company as well. So as you can see, decision-making is far from simple optimizations. There are a lot of things to deal with, and that's why there's a lot of value there. And through the results I will show later, you will see that it's as important or maybe even more important than the forecast. Yet how could we fill this decision-making process with forecasts? What are the tools, the most appropriate one for the job that's in front of us? Actually, there are 4 types of forecasts. There's what I would call the naked forecast, so basically a single figure, no information about the errors around that. So it's 100. Is it exactly 100? 100 plus minus 1 plus minus 100? Nobody knows. Here I'm maybe a little bit opinionated. In this specific context, it's not a forecast, right? It's a bet. Yesterday, we talked about prophecy in terms of forecast. Actually, it's not useful to make a decisions, and it's really hazardous to leverage this for a decision. Thankfully, most of the time we use point forecast, what I call deterministic forecast, so a mean plus information regarding the uncertainty around that mean. Most of the time, it's a standard deviation that's given. And behind this standard deviation, we have a big assumption that actually the demand of the error is normally distributed. It's a big assumption, at least in supply chain, because most of the time the demand is nothing but normally distributed. If you're buying tires for your car, you would buy 2 or 4. You're never going to buy 3, 1, or 5. So it's a multimodal distribution. And if you try to represent that with a normal distribution, actually you're not getting the right information. Same happens for furniture. If you're buying chairs for your new table, you will buy 4 or 6, maybe 2, but you're not going to buy 1 or 9. It's not normally distributed. Third is the quantile forecast. Those are great because most of the time in supply chain we are aiming for a specific quantile forecast. The hard thing here is that we want those specific quantile on a given time period, which might differ a lot from a supplier to another, etc. And when we generate quantile forecasts, for example, for daily demand, actually we are not allowed to, unfortunately, to sum them to know what would be the quantile for a 3-day period, which makes them hard to use if they are not, or impossible to use if they are not really tuned to the expected use. And finally, here comes what I would call the probabilistic forecast. So behind that, there's a lot of different forecasts, but actually the idea is to have no strict assumption or some informed assumption about the distributions that behind that. So it could be a distribution plus its parameter. It could be a list of possible futures and the corresponding probabilities. It could be a sample describing 100 possible futures, each being equiprobable. Different ways to convey the information, but the key point is we are trying to really describe the whole uncertainty, and that's just gold for us. That's gold for decision making, because from that we can derive a lot of information, a lot of analysis, and we can sum them over different periods, etc. So it's definitely worth it. So this is a bit theoretical, just to show a quick experiment we had on the M5 competition. We splitted the data set into an ABC classification based on turnover, so different items for each. Classically, we aim different type of service level as a target. Green lines are probabilistic forecasts, red lines are deterministic ones. Those are the top 5 forecasts, the top winning forecasts from the competition from each track. And as you can see, so here we computed the achieved service level. So if we take a specific quantile from those forecasts, and here we compute that for different cycle duration, how many days ahead we are looking for the achieved service level. And when we do that, you see that first, deterministic forecasts are not well calibrated compared to the target that's here in the dot line. And when the duration increases, because the normality assumption is wrong, actually there's a strong decrease in terms of achieved service level. Whereas in probabilistic forecast doesn't mean the forecast is perfect, right? There's, of course, good and bad probabilistic forecasts, but they happen to be more calibrated at first because they were designed for that. And this, because they better fit the true demand, they are also more calibrated over time. So if you're ordering for a 5 days cycle period, then you would actually reach the 93% demand that you expect. And whereas in deterministic, you would be only a few percent below, which is quite a concern as well. So it's an easy way to see how well the normality assumption stands and if the forecast is actually calibrated or not. So if probabilistic forecasts are so good, then why the hell are there so few companies actually using that? Because usually something is profitable for a company, they quickly embrace that. So there must be something wrong somewhere. So and it's a totally legitimate question. So why is that? As you will see, there are lots of challenges and barriers when we want to turn from a deterministic forecast to a probabilistic one, and even for a decision making. It's literally a new paradigm. Data is new. We used to have one single number. Now we have a distribution of a lot of different values to handle. So this means that we need new tools because a distribution does not fit in an Excel set, in an Excel cell. Sorry, it does not easily fit in the ERP system, etc. So we need some tools to store and handle those forecasts. The maths are different. We used to make basic sum of the mean forecast, and it was great. Now suddenly we have to make some more evolved way to add the distributions. We might go for convolutions. We might go for using the distribution if it's a real fitted distribution. Maybe it's something that could be added. It could be using a Monte Carlo simulation to do that. But there's nothing really hard about it. But it's way beyond the skills of most people in supply chain. Metrics. Let's talk a little bit about metrics, accuracy, and so on. We know that so far, the most used metric is MAPE or WMAPE. And despite evidence of these metrics being flawed in certain contexts, companies stick to these specific metrics. They like it. They are really comfortable with that. And now suddenly we are saying, oh, we are in probabilistic world, so you are forced to change. And now you will use a metric that's a bit more complicated, that's not a percentage anymore, and you don't have choice. You have to use that. So definitely it's hard. Decision making. If you want to actually make good use of this new information, it would be great to have better decision making that could actually leverage those information. So it means that you have to align supply planning on top of your demand forecasting team. Those guys have their own agenda, their priority, etc. But you have to align both worlds together to make it happen. So again, it makes it really hard. Last but not least, it's maybe more a psychological issue, but so far when the guys ask you how many items are we going to sell next week, we said 100, and they were happy with that. It was wrong. It's not 100. There's few chances it will be exactly 100. But actually, they were really happy with that. It gave the false sense of we know the future. We were gods there. And suddenly, if they ask us what's going to be the forecast next week, we get, oh, come on, there are chances it's 100, but it could be 90, it could be 110 as well. And suddenly they're like, okay, they don't know anything anymore, so let's not trust them anymore. So there's a question of trust regarding the way people interpret uncertainty. Despite the fact that uncertainty was there before, and it's the exact same right now. We're just showing the uncertainty, which is better. And there are, at Vecchia, by the way, we are doing that with a lot of companies, prospects, and customers, ultimately. And it's really a hit or miss project. a lot of companies are not able to make the transformation. It's not that probabilistic does not deliver value, it's because they are not ready to make such a move. It's too daunting for them. And on top of that, there are open questions when we turn to probabilistic. Yesterday, we discussed a lot and many conferences about judgmental forecasts. What happens to all those appreciated gestures where we override the forecast? It's easy to change 100 to 110, but if I now have a distribution of probabilities and the mean or the median is 100, and I'm saying, no, I want 110, what do I mean? Should I uplift the entire distribution? Should I change the odds so that the median is now, or the mean is changing towards 110? And even regarding the uncertainty, I'm bringing new information to the system. Does that mean that there's less uncertainty concerning the future, that I have more clue, and then the uncertainty is reduced? All of these are open questions. Another one, how to turn probabilistic. I said, if we want to make the best out of probabilistic forecasts, we need probabilistic decision-making on top of it. But doing both at once might be really hard. Is it mandatory? Is it possible to start with a probabilistic forecast and then months, years later, upgrade the decision-making? Or maybe the opposite? Could we leverage deterministic forecast in the decision-making, probabilistic decision-making? Those are open questions. And last but not least, what's the value? That's the elephant in the room, right? What's the value a company might actually derive from this? Of course, they can compute forecast value added based on a CRPS metric and say, okay, this forecast is better because the CRPS is better. But actually, it's the quality of the forecast that's here being assessed. It's not the value that's being delivered for the company. How could a company be comfortable in front of such a big project, a lot of unknowns, a lot of change management, unknowns regarding how much value it's going to trigger? Definitely the safe answer is quite usual, the red light here. It's really hard to get a green light, despite the fact that from a theoretical point of view, it delivers more value, and in practice, the companies who did it actually saw that it delivered value. But from the project standing point, you have too much unknowns and uncertainty and risk to trigger such a project. So companies that are doing that, by the way, it really requires being visionary and a bit of bravery as well. Now we'll try to answer two of the open questions, and I hope that it will trigger more interest from companies for this type of approach. First question we're going to try to address is, how do we get there? We are currently deterministic forecast, deterministic decision-making, how to turn to fully probabilistic, and which path is the best. And second, what's the value? Okay, because if we are not able to show the money to the prospect or to the company for an internal sales even, there's no chance they will give us only 1 single minute to discuss what we are thinking about. As usual for this, I'll be leveraging the M5. It's quite usual here, and the main reason I'm turning to this specific one is that first it was retail and closer to inventory decisions, so definitely something that fits with our expertise, but also it has a probabilistic and a deterministic track, meaning we can really assess not only the forecast quality, but also the decision they would have triggered, and on top of that, the value a company would have get from it. We'll only be leveraging one, not the entire data set, but the information from one store, and we'll be here assessing the quality of deterministic and probabilistic forecasts, not all of them, the top 5 of each track, plus a few benchmarks to show to test it. The M5 competition was a fantastic competition, but it's a forecasting competition, so there are missing data if we want to make decisions out of it. So again, we had to enrich it a little bit. So we added information regarding pack sizes, costs, classic costs in retail, gross margins. We computed ABC classifications. We set ABC target service levels. And we implemented 2 different inventory policies. One that is deterministic, a classic service level one, and one that is totally probabilistic and that don't care about the service level, care about cost and identifying which decision is the most profitable. In terms of order schedule, it's 3 orders a week, an order every 3 days, sorry. 2 days lead time to be delivered, and we are simulating 28 days ahead to have a sequence of decisions. With all set, we have a fantastic test bench to make a lot of tests and see what's the value of this specific approach. How to measure the value or the performance of a supply chain? Here we are referring to the work of a very brilliant man that you probably know, that is Bram Desmet. If you don't know him yet, please go to his website and buy his books, and etc. He's really linking supply chain to company strategy, to and now with his third book to sustainability, social impact, etc. Very, very interesting, lot of insights. It's not operational, it's mostly strategical side, but a lot of things to learn from him. His view, and we are totally subscribing to it, is that there are 3 dimensions to estimate the value of a supply chain, of the performance through service, what's the value we generate. So here we focused on gross margin for the costs that we had to pay to make this, to offer this service. So here it's cost of goods sold, and it's in this simulation only holding costs. So very simplistic, I would say, naive view of it. In real world, there's a lot of additional costs, but we wanted to keep it simple as well, not to put too much noise in this demonstration. If we subtract costs from service, we get the EBIT. What's the value, the net value we have generated. And the third dimension is really important as well, is how much money we needed to make this happen. What's the capital employed? And here we use the average inventory value to kind of assess the capital that would be required to offer this. And when you get your EBIT and you divide that by your capital employed, you get the ROC metric, which is how much money you generate per euros or dollars invested in your supply chain. So the higher, the better. Triangles are great, yet they are not, and it's easy to plot as well, but it's really hard to compare triangles from one to another. So we turn back to a 2-dimension plot, and it's quite important to understand it because we will use it all along the demonstration. I called it the bang for the buck. So here, on the horizontal axis, you have the buck. What's the money required, the invested, the capital required to do the business. And here would be the EBIT, so the gross margin minus COGS, which one again is not all the COGS, but only holding costs here. So it's not truly COGS, but or it's a simplistic view on COGS. We will use the same presentation for the entire remaining slides. Questions about, we said we would like also to assess how to turn probabilistic. It's a bit of chicken and egg problem, sorry. Should we start with probabilistic forecast? Should we start with probabilistic decision making first? Should we do both at once? So typically there are 3 options. We have 2 possible forecasts, deterministic, probabilistic. We have 2 possible decision process, deterministic, probabilistic. Of course, there might be other ways to do that, but here is simplified. Currently, we are in option 1, that's the status quo. We want to get there, that's our holy grail. And then we might go directly, but some companies might want to leverage, to go for a probabilistic forecast and leverage it in a deterministic service level way. That's option 2, and option 4 is the opposite. We'll take the deterministic. I didn't save it earlier, I forgot about it, but the deterministic point forecast, the one where there's normality assumption, actually is a naive probabilistic forecast. We have this standard deviation, and we can make the assumption it's normally distributed, so we can build a distribution out of it. So that's how we'll do it here to probabilize our deterministic forecast and see what kind of value it would trigger. First, option 1, status quo. That's the results we obtained. I hope it's good. Okay, it's okay. So we have those green points that represent each the performance of one single forecast. The triangles are benchmarks. The squares are our best forecast for the competition. So you see that you have different values and performance. Actually, we'll pick this one as our reference to compare forecasts together. So this one is the moving average. I consider it a naive one. It's not pure, a real naive one, but it's the kind of forecast a company without any skills in forecasting would easily implement. So we'll pick that as our reference, and we'll compare each time capital and EBIT to others. And here, for example, we see that the best forecast in the competitions who are here actually deliver more value than the moving average, which is good news, actually. But it's quite interesting to see that the best forecast actually is not 001, it's 001, it's 003, and actually there's even forecast number 4 and 5 are delivering better performance than forecast 1. Just to, it really back up a little bit the conclusion that I came last year, or the very first year, regarding the link between accuracy and the value being delivered. If we just now compute and measure the added value of actually improving the forecast from a naive moving average one, we see that we are able to generate 1.2 thousand euros in EBIT, which is 0.77% more. It might sound nothing, but it's remind that it's only 3,000 items in one single store. If we put that to the size of a real-world supermarket, it would mean adding 171,000 euros per year per supermarket, which is not bad, actually. So we have our first case, right? Let's try to figure out what's in the other cases. We'll turn to option 2. Option 2, probabilistic forecast first, and then we just feed them within a service level oriented decision process. So basically we project the forecast and say, okay, that's the service level we want, what's then required to be ordered, and we order that. Basic math. Here we have the results here in blue. So the good news is, wow, we are increasing EBIT. Awesome. But at the same time, bad news, we have to add a lot more inventory to really perform this way. That's great, but is this better? Not sure, because we might not be allowed to do that. So we have to add some constraints. If we want to compare different performance of different inventory policies, we have to compare them to be fair on comparison. So here we added a constraint on the amount of cash that we are allowed to spend to make the business. And we picked 80 just because it was handy, because it's more or less the performance of the deterministic approach. So we pick this one. And all we have to do now is to project the performance of those forecasts if they were here. And basically, this means drawing what we call the efficient frontier, or the Pareto frontier, which looks like this. So it's a little bit more fuzzy to read, but actually a lot of information in there. And we still have here our moving average forecast, but we see if we aim for different higher service level, what would be the inventory and the EBIT, and if we go for lower service level, what would be the inventory and the EBIT. That's how the efficient frontier is being drawn. And now if we zoom in just on this constraint, we are able to see that actually the best forecast, the best probabilistic forecast is not the best one for the competition. Actually, it was a benchmark, but we also see that it's quite deceptive, actually. We are generating little value compared to what we can do with deterministic forecast. So I was a bit annoyed about that at first to show that, but actually that's the result. So here we are. So they tend to underperform here compared to fully deterministic. So we have our results for option 2, which is there. Let's turn to option 3, Holy Grail. Wow, even more EBIT, but even more inventory, and massively more inventory, something like 20–25% more inventory. So totally not possible in real world. So again, we'll have to project those down to this constraint, right? To compare them, to have a fair comparison. To do that, we have to draw the efficient frontier, but now we have a problem. In the previous method, it was service level oriented, so we had a parameter we can tune and change and to draw this frontier. Now it's cost optimized. It says the most profitable decision is this one, that's all. So we have to add some constraints to the systems in order to draw variance of it. And to do that, this is what we did. So we generate the optimal orders. We explode those orders in terms of logistic units. So if the order was by 10 and the supplier provides cases of 2, then we would have bought 5 cases. So here we would have 5 lines, cases 1, cases 2, cases 3, etc. And for each, we compute what's its contribution to the cost and what's its contribution to constraints. So typically, how much EBIT, how much capital it would require. We sort that. The sorting is not that easy, but actually the goal is to have the most profitable and the less costly item first. So we sort them, and we just take all of this. This is our wish list. We pick everything that's on top of it up to the constraint limit of 80,000 euros. And when we do that, we can, and if we aim for different constraints, we are able to draw the efficient frontier of what was first here. Now it's plotted here. And actually, you said, wow, we are not in the same world anymore, not in Kansas anymore, I would say. This approach is actually delivering way more value for the same cash. And you can look at it. I had the opportunity to show that to a prospect, and they looked at it also the other way around, saying, okay, for the same EBIT, I could operate with way less inventory. I could really save tons of cash, of capital. So that's definitely one of the most beautiful things you can see in supply chain, and it's not something we see quite often. Higher profit, less cash. If we zoom in, actually, quite interestingly, it's luck. It's just because it happens that 80, we had 3 forecasts that gave the same performance, but it would have been different if we had aimed for something else. But actually, we have 3 different forecasts, the best one, but also 2 benchmarks, which behave pretty well. And if we compute the added value, it's, again, really, really massive. If I pick up my notes, it should be something like quite a lot of money anyway. If we go to it's 450,000 euros per supermarket in the real world. So definitely high impact. This is option 3, and with a small rocket because it rocks. Option 4, what about leveraging our deterministic forecasts, consider them as naive probabilistic ones with a normality assumption, and use them with this decision-making process. Again, we plot those. Here we are, the orange ones. We can also draw the efficient frontier. And we get those results, which are quite interesting because, again, we are delivering more profit with the same forecast, exact same forecast. So it's not a question of forecast here, it's a question of decision-making. But we are delivering more profit with less requirements than before. So definitely really interesting, and actually the profits we're delivering are pretty close to the roof. There's a gap, but it's not that big. So if we zoom in again and we compute, we get 2.9 and 1.8% improvement on EBIT for the same constraints on cash. Just looking at time. Okay, perfect. So we entirely filled our implementation option map. And here we can have a few conclusions. First, does turning probabilistic, turning probabilistic worth it? Definitely it's worth it, and really a lot. There's a big gap in the kind of value we could deliver. Second, is it a good idea to start with probabilistic forecasts and leverage them in the good old decision making? It seems, I'd like to dig on that a little bit more, but clearly here in this case, it doesn't make sense because it would put the business in danger actually, because it delivers less value than working on the deterministic forecast. And the good news is for a company that's not able to turn directly from option 1 to option 3, because again, we have to align multiple teams, it's a huge investment, etc. Actually, if we stick to our deterministic forecast and use them in a probabilistic way, we can already unlock a lot of value. And that could be a way to start year 1, we could do that, and year 2, we go to full probabilistic. But I think that many companies will also just stop here because there's also a lot of interest from a demand planner point of view with deterministic forecasts, which are easier to operate with, to share everything, and you guys are really happy with those as well. So it could be a good fit. Let's discuss a bit about return on investment, because it's great, it delivers a lot of value, but also it's way more computational intensive. We are assessing a lot more scenarios, we are accounting for costs, etc. So before that, making decisions were kind of straightforward. Now it's really getting tough. For the M5 competition already, some academics are very concerned about the winning methods, because actually if we deploy them, roll out in a real world, they would not be able to cope with the size of the problem, or it would take too much time to be trained and to generate a forecast, or too costly, or all of this together. So this is, of course, a concern as well. So we'll try to address that in what's coming next. Because sometimes it could be good on paper, but not applicable in reality. So let's build a case. So we basically use the same results as before, but we'll project them into let's say we are a small retail chain, 100 supermarkets. It's really tiny. Usually retail chains have hundreds and thousands of them, even without speaking about Carrefour or Walmart, but really a retail chain like Intermarché in France is 2,000 stores, so definitely 100 is a small player. And we are assessing the value of turning from the current status quo to the holy grail. Depending on the strategy of the company, they may have different way to look at the return on investment. Some companies don't have any cash issue, they just want to keep the same cash involved, but they want to improve their business, their EBIT. So if we are on that, it would mean for a 100% supermarket retail share, 20 million euros of EBIT. Again, it's not true EBIT, there's only holding costs, etc. So it's not, please don't compare that to the official financials that you share. But anyway, it shows that there's 28 million to be gained, and which represent a lot of money. For a company that would be more interested in saving cash and reducing their inventory, keeping the same business, we can save the cash for 14 million euros. And from that, we could derive some reduction in holding costs. Maybe not all that is possible because there are fixed costs in there, but it still represents a lot of money. And option 3, what's great here is because the efficient frontier is way above, we might not have to choose. We can do both as well. We can improve EBIT and decrease inventory at the same time. There's infinite way to do that, depending on the appetite of the company. I just pick one. So it's 13 million euros of added EBIT, plus 8 million, with 8 million euros of inventory saved. So again, different ways to look at it. Now I told you that I will share about computational cost, time, etc. It's pretty hard to get access to search information, at least I don't have, except what we do internally at Vecchia, because this is the kind of solution we roll out for our customers. I was not allowed to open the book and say, this is our computational cost, this is etc. But I picked the price catalog of Vecchia, the public prices of the solution, and the solution for, actually it's not a commercial slide, it's not to say, hey, please buy Vecchia, it's just to kind of compare the gains, the benefits with a market solution that propose this approach. And the solution for us would be 640,000 euros a year. Meaning that there's really, and it's a solution that it's not a POC or a toy product. It's something that's deployed at scale with large retailers, etc. It's something that has been has demonstrated its capacity to handle such project. And there's really high return on investment if you compare cost to actually the benefit you could get from it. Where's the added value? Because you might be thinking, all this is pretty interesting, but actually it seems that the decision making is adding value, but we are in forecasting competition. So what does that mean for us? What's the contribution of the forecast in there? If we look at it was the option 4. When we turn forecast, those are deterministic forecast. That's the performance we obtain with the deterministic approach. That's the performance we obtain with a deterministic forecast used in a probabilistic way. And that's the added value, so one minus the other, right? So all deterministic forecasts actually benefit from an improvement. But if we look more closely to the results, actually benchmarks benefits less than the best forecast. Meaning, okay, it's still great to try to improve and have better forecasts, more qualitative one, etc., because they would keep delivering more value than usual ones. And they are delivering more value, but also they are starting from a higher position in the plot because they already delivered value before. So that's one way of looking at it. Another way is looking at the Pareto of the efficient frontier. And if we look at the difference per option between the worst forecast and the best one, we see that actually there's, except for the blue ones here, but we have more or less the same ability to add value through the forecast, meaning that if right now a company is ready to invest in improving its forecast because it means it's worth it, it keeps worthing it with probabilistic, right? So it's not that we are forgetting about the forecast and now turning exclusively to decision making. It's that both will keep contributing value and will keep having the same impact. To be yet totally frank and honest, if I was a company and had to decide to invest in one or the other, forecast or decision making, I would invest first in decision making because it clearly is the game changer. But yet from that, there's still a lot of room. It was just to be a bit deceptive for the future. And now final advocacy, just to say that it's, there's a lot of value in this way of looking at how to optimize through a probabilistic approach. For example, we are currently cooperating with a retailer in Europe on fruit and vegetables. Here there are big issues the big issue is being that the fruit and vegetables are perishable goods, so they are short shelf life. You can't account for that in a way if you optimize using a service level. But with a cost function, you can project the quantity you might have to waste and account for that cost in the optimization and really find the right trade-off between those. For this customer, it was the way they optimized was even a bit different. They didn't want to maximize profitability. They wanted to reach a given gross margin level. From there, they're happy with the results. And when this level is reached, then do as much business as you can. Just optimize margin. So you can really fine-tune the cost function to have such a behavior, and it's not that hard to do with a probabilistic engine that consider cost, etc. But it's impossible to do such thing with service level 1. Other case, spare parts management. We often focus on, when we think of supply chain, on the core activity of the company. So if you're a retailer on the goods you're going to sell, but if you're a retailer and you have distribution centers, you also have those inventories that are there to maintain the distribution center with all the necessary spare parts to repair in case something is going wrong, because you don't want your distribution center to stop from delivering. Those inventories are not for sale. There's no margin there to be made. That's just an insurance. And it's different in the way you present them in the optimization. It's also something, sorry about that. It's also something that you can do with a cost function and a probabilistic approach. We work for car tires importers in Europe, and they buy from Asia, and they buy full containers, of course. They wanted to maximize the value in each of the customers. They can't buy everything they wanted, so they were constrained. So which tire to pick? Actually, if they've gone for a service level, etc., that would be a really averaging approach. Here we can really say, these 2 tires, these 4 ones, and then this one, and then this one, and stop it because the container is full. It's really easy to handle such constraints, whereas it's way harder with different approach. And last but not least, but if we want also to account, to optimize, considering what's the impact on CO2, what's the impact of our company, etc., that could also be included in such systems. And from my knowledge, it's not possible to do that with service level, except reducing or increasing the service level. But you're not that handy. Here you can really put your constraints, your strategy in a cost function, and then apply it. So in a nutshell, 3 things I would definitely be really happy if you keep 3 things from this presentation. First, uncertainty is important. It's here, it's on my shirt as well. So if you see me at lunchtime, you will remind about this. But that's really what's required if we want to make optimization. If not, it's just we will follow the one future that the forecast shows, but there's nothing like optimization possible. Second, it's worth it. It's definitely tough, a lot of change management, a lot of issues, but we see that it's worth it. And we also seen that it might not be as tough as we think at first, because if we are not to go to option 3, full probabilistic, and we stick to option 4, the intermediate one, we are already delivering a lot of value, and in fact, there's little impact to the business. No impact to forecasting, and little impact to the decision process. So that's it. I hope you liked it. I don't know what time it is. Okay, perfect. So we might have a little bit time left for tough question. I'm sure you're going to have tough questions.
Well, thanks for presentation. I would rather have a comment which goes back to our discussion.
Sure.
You said that one of the questions, why the companies do not use probabilistic forecasting if it's so good. My point of view, actually everybody uses it, but maybe not in a way you propose, or maybe in a way you see it. I will give an example. So suppose you have a product, just one product, which is kind of selling like 0 to 100, 100, 150, 50, 0, and so on. So the point forecast will be 100. And you show this point forecast to maybe sales team, marketing team, whatever, and that's okay. You don't show them the distribution.
Yeah.
Then you probably assume that in that case, if it's 100, then you need to supply 100, but it's completely wrong, right?
Yeah,
so any decent replenishment software will have probabilistic distribution inside and give 200 to supply probably, or something like that. But still, people who use it will not see any distribution. They will see 200. So first of all, the comment is, I think a lot of companies use it anyway. They maybe don't. Maybe they don't even understand that behind this, in the black box, there is a distribution. My question is, do you think it's necessary to show them this? Why would you show to the sales team this distribution, which will raise a lot of questions? What's actually this? We don't understand it. 100 is a number we understand. And this strange graph, we don't know what's that and how to use it. And the same for a replenishment guy, maybe. So maybe there is no need for them to see it at all. Or maybe there is need, and then why?
Okay. First, totally agree. I mean, supply chain are operating, even maybe not on the most optimal way, but they are doing good business. And when they compute safety stocks, they account for uncertainty in the system. So definitely they are not ignorant or naive or regarding the fact that there's uncertainty in there. Totally agree with that. It's still very simplistic approach to handle that, but there's way to I mean, we are at least trying to do that. Is it worth it to show complexity, additional complexity to others? If I'm mostly have in mind software to software integration, meaning that the probabilistic distribution is the output of a forecast and is an input for the replenishment system, which means it's not necessarily written in an Excel spreadsheet that people would have to read. Actually, it's the role of the machine, and definitely here, for this type of decisions, I don't expect supply planners to kind of start to compute, okay, what am I gonna do? If there's no interest in that, machines are doing it way better, and they don't have even expertise to bring in for that. So for me, for this kind of replenishment, it will be fully automated, and so no human will actually see such forecast. In retail, I think in practice, few people actually watch the forecast at the SKU level for the replenishment purpose. For promotions, etc., definitely they do, but this specific purpose, no. Still, if it was a decision that would have to be made by human, I still believe that we need to have at least a few scenarios, maybe not the entire distribution, but pick this, maybe not the extreme ones, but the 10th percentile and the 90th percentile, just to show, even if it's triangle, 3 scenarios, that's the best case, worst case, and basic scenario, would be a way to convey this, and would change the mindset of decision makers that they have to account for more than just this possible future, and that they should prepare that to other futures that could harm the business. So I think it's still worth it. But yeah, typically that's what I would answer. But thanks for the question. Very important one, by the way.
Yeah, hey, Johann, thank you for the presentation. So just trying to understand the conclusions a little bit more. So you had a slide that had the 4 options. If you can go back to that slide. This one, yeah. So in the decision process, moving from a deterministic service level to a probabilistic cost optimization, are you optimizing across items when you're moving from a deterministic service level to a probabilistic? So like
so this one,
yeah.
Here, option 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did because we wanted to include the constraints on capital employed.
Yeah.
So we had to, we computed first the optimal decision for each SKU individually.
Right.
And then we had to sort it out. So, okay, I can't afford all of this. Which one should I buy to really maximize my profit?
Got it.
And
so
there's a multi-item selection or constraint.
Okay, so for that 80,000 or whatever that cost constraint was, maybe it's like a greedy algorithm or something to pick which items we need to carry. So it's optimizing across items in that case.
Yeah,
okay.
In that case, because of a constraint. But in real world, there are always constraints. And from my experience, when you turn probabilistic, the optimum is always more inventory, more EBIT. And you have to come back to real world and to apply such constraints.
Okay, thank you.
And if you don't do that, by the way, the first thing that the customer will, in our case, the customer or the company that's implementing it will see is that, okay, my inventory is skyrocketing, finance will be like, what's going on, and it will be on fire, and so on. So definitely really important to account for them as well. Please.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I had a question on number 4 here.
Yeah.
So what source of, I'm a little bit confused about the difference between 3 and 4, because it seems like in order to do a cost-optimized decision process, there need to be some sense of demand volatility feeding into that, that you're referencing. So even if you're pulling from a deterministic forecast, are you using like historical forecast error or something to do that, or how are you optimizing that cost there?
Actually, in this specific study, I didn't compute any forecasts by myself. It's all the forecasts that are available in the data in the M5 dataset, because at the end of the competition, they released the top ones. So I just consume them and use them to compare and also avoid being trapped with badly configuring a forecast or whatsoever. So the option 4 is the forecast from the deterministic track, and option 3 is the forecast for the probabilistic track, with the same, both with the same decision making on top of it.
So how then when you're talking about optimizing your decision making, is that, what kind of analysis is driving that?
Actually, we project the inventory from now. Okay, we know the inventory right now. We project it over time, so up to the lead time for the delivery of the goods, and then all over the period up to the next delivery. And we project that in a probabilistic way. So we have distribution. So from time to time, we have this inventory that decreases and the uncertainty that adds as well. And then at the end of the goal is to estimate what's the need in terms of orders from this distribution. So there's a shadow inventory where inventory gets negative. In real world, it doesn't exist, but in the simulation it does. That allows to evaluate how much inventory is actually missing. And then from that, it gives a kind of upper bound of the maximum inventory to order. And then there's all the different options to assess. Should I buy a one case, two case, a pallet? Should I cover the entire need, or should I just discard it and don't do anything? And not buying is also a decision. And if there are costs associated, it's just a question of comparing costs afterwards.
Got it.
I hope it's clear. It's not on the slide, so I hope it's clear.
No, that is clear. I'll come up and find you later.
Sure.
I have one more question, but I don't want to take everyone's time. Yeah.
Johann, good talk. Yeah. I did come in late, so you may have covered this already. So in the probabilistic scenario, right, the replenishment is automatic. So I have two questions. One is, there is no explicit calculation or definition of safety stock, right? Just a confirmation from you.
In the probabilistic one, in the deterministic world, you compute safety stock on one side, and then you add your mean on top of it, and there's cycle stock and safety stock. Here, you just project your need, uncertainty included, and this encapsulates both inventories. And in real world, there's nothing like, if you go to the inventory on the shelf, there's nothing like a real stock, and there's just a stock that's there to cover all the need. So it's the same approach.
Okay, so basically there is no explicit calculation or derivation of safety stock in this scenario, right? Probabilistic forecast, you essentially say, hey, I want 95%. Whatever that is, that's what you're going to replenish.
Yeah, you don't want 90, here in this case, you don't want 95. You say, what's the best decision to make based on costs?
Right.
You can add constraints to 95, because if the strategy of a company is actually to deliver high service, despite it's not profitable, it's fair, no problem, but it's not necessary to do the optimization. And just to give you the full details, end of the process, in our solution, we explicitly extract the safety stock-like quantity, because companies quite often want to communicate on that internally. What's the amount of safety stock? The finance guys want to know that, even though it makes no sense from a physical point of view. It makes sense for them, so we can derive that. But it's just a byproduct, and it has no impact on the way it's computed. It's just afterwards we kind of reconstruct it.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask the second question?
Yes.
Okay. So the second question is, right, this automatic replenishment, the probabilistic forecast replenishment, all of it happens at the item, DC level, what have you, right?
At the decision level, so effectively the tiny level.
Right. But let's say if you put this into an S&OP process, right, and then you convey a forecast at some type of an aggregation level to the S&OP participants, and then let's say, or even sales and marketing, and let's say they have a decision point, continuing on Igor's question, right? So they say, hey, I don't think the forecast is right. We just want to increase the forecast by 15% because we think there is some external magic that's going to happen in the next month. So, and then they decide, yes, we do want to up the forecast by 15%. In that case, what happens downstream to your probabilistic forecast and the distribution forecast at the detail level? How will you superimpose that?
Super important questions. That's part of the open questions that I mentioned, by the way, because it's really tough, and I don't have a fully opinionated view on that. In this case, retail, low level, etc., I mostly subscribe to automated forecast and without any touch on it, and automated decision making. So easy to say that your question does not apply. But still, our solution is also being used in context with more upstream decisions regarding how much to buy from suppliers in Asia, and it's long-term decisions, more impact, accuracy, forecasts are more important there in terms of value than in those tiny decisions. And they want to tune the forecast. Right now, within the solution, the approach is kind of naive. We basically uplift the distribution accordingly. I'm not totally in favor of that because it's, but still it's an interesting point, and I would love to have the academic work on it as well to see what's the best way to deal with that. In a recent podcast, I had a chance to interview Stefan de Kock, who's also very keen on probabilistic. And that was part of the questions at the end. I'm not sure yet about what he replied at the end, but there was one of the questions is how to deal with that, because there are different ways.
Johann, I have one more question, which is your optimization, your objective function for this table is EBIT, but do you track in your solution other functions that might be important to the business, like stockouts?
Sure. Here I limited, I wanted to convey a simple message, so I turned to a message that people from finance might get. They are not in the room anyway, but because those are definitely people who might raise interest in such results. But yeah, from the solution, I have all the information day by day, week by week, by SKU, so I can definitely derive all the operational KPIs, usual KPIs of a supply chain, sure. And on a daily basis, they operate not on EBIT, but on those KPIs.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.